Good evening, everybody. My name is Caleb here with Indiana Storm Chasing Network here. Thanks for joining us here this evening on this Thursday night. Tonight, we're going to be talking about our system that'll be impacting the state over the next 24 hours. And then we're going to take a look at what comes next. We're going to look at the extended outlook, and that will take us through February. Without further ado here, let's jump right into it here. Currently, our system is moving on in. We have some moderate to heavy rainfall across southern Indiana from Evansville to Bloomington. Radar does show a little bit north of Indianapolis. However, a lot of this is not touching the ground here yet from Fort Wayne to South Bend. It is raining in Logansport and Muncie and Jay and Blackford County, but once you get further north, Allen, Whitley, and all the way up to Elkhart County, a lot of this is falling as virga. There's some dry air that this system has to work out to allow that rain to come to the ground. So without that further ado here, let's go into time this all out here. Here is a look at the HRRR model, which is a numerical model. It's a short-term model that we use here as guidance here. And here we're looking at 8 p.m. tonight. Here you can see on this model, moderate to heavy rainfall across southern Indiana. Northern Indiana probably won't see a lot of rain here, especially across central Indiana. Is a dry slot looks to mix in. And what a dry slot is dry air in the mid-levels that does not allow rain or precipitation to fall hardly at all. So it makes it very hard for rain to fall. So lesser rainfall amounts across central Indiana. Northern Indiana there along the I-90 corridor could see some rain here tonight. As we move throughout the night here tonight, here we are at 1 a.m. Your bulk of the heaviest rainfall is out of southern Indiana. It'll be leaving southern Indiana after midnight, gradually tapering off. So between now and 1 a.m. is when we expect the heaviest rainfall to fall across southern Indiana. Northern Indiana here tonight, we'll see some showers here. Notice a little bit of pink there over Lake Erie. We'll have to watch that very closely near the Indiana-Michigan border as well as the Ohio border, as our temperatures could be marginally supportive of some wintry mix up there. We'll have to keep a close eye on that. As we move throughout the day on Friday, here we are at 11 a.m. on Friday. Notice the bulk of the heaviest rain is out of southern Indiana. It is impacting west or eastern Kentucky, Tennessee, as well as the Ohio Valley. But as you notice here, our upper level low, our surface low, is moving across Illinois, Missouri right now as we speak. But on the north side of that, you can see some rain and even some thunderstorms trying to develop across central Ohio, all the way across central and northern Indiana tomorrow morning. We'll have to watch these pretty closely as they could be some small hailstones and some of those stronger showers and thunderstorms tomorrow. We'll talk about that here in a bit. As we move through tomorrow, here's tomorrow evening at 6 p.m., here's where we're going to have to watch temperatures a little bit more closely, especially across northern Indiana. Generally north of the I-90 corridor is where we're really going to have to watch our temperature profiles. Models are trying to have something called wet bulbing or some snow that's trying to mix in there on the north side of the warm front here. We're going to have to watch that pretty closely, though. Though right now impacts are not overly expected here across the region, as temperatures are going to be marginally supportive of snow, right around 33, 34 degrees. But if we drop any cooler, that'll be something to keep an eye on for slippery road conditions, something we'll have to watch moving forward here. But the heavy rain is going to be the biggest story here over the next 24 hours here across southern Indiana. Right now, here's our rain totals that we are expecting here. Here's that dry slot I was talking about. Look at your rainfall totals, much less across central and portions of northern Indiana, anywhere from 1/4 of an inch to 3/4 of an inch. And this is through Friday night. Friday night at around 7 o'clock. Perhaps a little bit later than that. We may have to up totals a little bit across northern Indiana, just depending on where this banding really sets up there across northern Indiana. If that seems to hold in place, we may have to up those totals a little bit. But for right now, 1/2 inch to 1 inch is expected across northern Indiana, lesser amounts across central Indiana. And then as you go south of Indianapolis, we expect those totals to gradually increase, with our heaviest totals closer to the Ohio River. Some places could pick up anywhere between 1 inch and 1 inch and 3/4. An isolated report of 2 inches cannot be ruled out, especially along the extreme southern Indiana-Kentucky border, right along the river there. Would not be surprised to see a 2-inch report in there. As a result of that heavy rainfall, the Weather Prediction Center has Indiana in a marginal risk for excessive rainfall. And what this is, not to be confused with the Storm Prediction Center, the Weather Prediction Center issues these outlooks when there is a risk for heavy rainfall that may cause ponding, flooding, and stuff like that. As you can see, southern Indiana is in a 1 out of 4 risk, a marginal risk, which is at least a 5% risk of minor flooding and ponding and excessive runoff and stuff like that. you can see the very sliver of southern Indiana right along the river is in a level 2 out of 4. That is your slight risk. A little bit heavier rainfall is expected right along the river there. Some training showers and perhaps a few embedded thunderstorms later tonight into tomorrow morning are expected down there. But today's not the only day where we expect excessive rainfall. Just today, the Weather Prediction Center issued a marginal risk for northern Indiana and even a slight risk for northwest Indiana, including Lake and Porter counties up there in far northwest Indiana. This is driven by those training showers that we shown earlier here. Here's a look here. This is what's really driven that expansion of the Weather Prediction Center's marginal risk and even slight risk today. This moderate to heavy rainfall is also falling on frozen ground, so that is not going to allow a lot of that rain to percolate into the soil that it normally would in the summertime and springtime, but rather sit on top and perhaps run off and fill your ditches and see some excess ponding on area roadways. So that is something we're going to have to watch here going into tomorrow. But something else to talk about here tomorrow is, we'll show you this slide right in here. This is tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Between 9 a.m. and 1 p.m., we're going to have to watch the warm front here across central Indiana, central Ohio. If you draw a line from just south of Pittsburgh all the way to Fort Wayne, Indiana, basically Bloomington, Indiana, and areas northward, north of Dayton, we're going to have to watch that area closely as there's some model guidance that's suggesting some elevated instability, and that could lead to some small hailstones. Severe weather is not expected tomorrow, but don't be surprised to see some pea-sized hail in any stronger shower or thunderstorm tomorrow. For that reason, we went ahead and issued a very low risk across central Indiana tomorrow in blue, where we think the atmosphere is marginally supportive of those hailstones, generally pea-size to dime size. For severe weather, we need to have 1-inch hail or quarter size or greater. We're not going to see that tomorrow. Tomorrow is going to be a very low-end risk, perhaps pea-size, maybe dime, but generally pea-size or smaller tomorrow in our stronger showers. And that risk does extend into Ohio. We have that highlighted there for central Ohio and north central Indiana throughout tomorrow. We think the best time frame for that is going to be anywhere between 9 a.m. and about 1 to 2 p.m. tomorrow afternoon. So the middle of the day there, it's a really narrow window, not a long duration event, but there is a narrow window where we could see some elevated instability to help get those updrafts strong enough to support some hailstones. And something else to talk about too is the amount of cold air that we have in the atmosphere tomorrow. Associated with our low pressure, there's a deep cold layer aloft that'll help those water droplets freeze quicker and also help support those hailstones. I wanted to show you guys this here, get into some meteorology here a little bit going into tomorrow's event. This is what we call an atmospheric sounding. So if you imagine taking a pizza cutter and slicing the atmosphere in half and then opening it up, this is what you're going to see here. We're looking at the ground all the way up to the stratosphere here. This is a vertical profile of the atmosphere. Here at the ground here where you see those two temperatures, the one in red is your actual temperature, and the green line there is your moisture. That's your dew point, right? Where those two lines meet at the ground, you can see the number 1,000 there in the bottom left. That's 1,000 millibar. That's just above the surface here at the ground. You can see your temperatures tomorrow right around the mid-40s. 45 degrees is where this sounding was taken. But what you can see here are those two lines, how they kind of bulge out there at the surface. That's what's called a surface inversion, where you have cold air trapped at the ground with some warm air aloft before the air rapidly cools down as it ascends upward in the atmosphere here. This is actually called, I'll throw some meteorology out here. This is called your PBL line, which is actually your planetary boundary layer. And what that means is that it's your stable layer. Nothing happens below that inversion because the air is stable. You have cold air below, warm air aloft, nothing's happening there. But your cloud base is actually right above that. So your cloud bases are actually going to be a little bit higher tomorrow, about 5,000 feet off the ground or so tomorrow. But notice this yellow brick that I have here. See that white line there, how it curves a little bit out from your temperature? That's indicating some surface instability or some elevated instability that we'll have here tomorrow. That's the juice that these storms need for updrafts. That'll allow some hailstones to perhaps form tomorrow, generally small, pea size or greater. But that's kind of what we're looking at here in the atmosphere from a meteorological standpoint. Another thing I highlighted down here too is, see this number 225? That's a measurement of CAPE, or joules per kilogram. That's a measurement of how much energy we have. In the summertime, we really need that to be upwards of 1,000. But in wintertime, anything over 100 is justifiable here in the wintertime. as we don't really have a lot of instability this time of year to work with. Anything over that is enough to marginally support some updrafts that may cause some hail. So for that reason, we do have a very low risk for central Indiana as well as central Ohio here tomorrow. But that's not the only thing to worry about here tonight. Surface inversions can also cause a lot of fog. And for that, patchy dense fog is possible tonight across the entire region from Michigan, Indiana, and Ohio. It's not really going to be in one place or another. I can't really pinpoint it for you. But a lot of times where you get a valley or a crevice, dense fog is definitely possible in those areas tonight. So do be careful when driving tomorrow morning. Be wary of that. Plan for that. When driving in fog, it's always good to turn on your headlights with low beam, not on high beam. High beam actually scatters off the fog and it actually lowers your visibility. So it's best to drive with your low beam and also drive with caution as well. So that's really what we're going to be looking at here over the next 24 hours here as our rain system moves in. But what about the long term? A lot of people are asking, what is February going to look like? Is February going to be as cold as January? Are we going to get these big storms, these big Arctic blasts that we had last month? Well, let's take a look at that here. Here is the latest outlook from the Climate Prediction Center. The Climate Prediction Center issues these outlooks. These are long-term extended outlooks based on climate data that supports these trends. A lot of this data is based on a 30-year average. As you can see here in blue, that's your 30 to 50% chance of trending below average in terms of temperatures. And your reds and your oranges there, that's where you're leaning above average temperatures. But notice Indiana and much of the Ohio Valley and Great Lakes region is in white, neither orange or blue. That's because we have equal chances or near average. Near average temperatures are expected here for the near term. And a lot of that has to do with just the placement of the jet stream that we have here and the pattern we expect going forward. We do expect above average precipitation, though, during this time period. Whether that falls as rain or snow will be determined on the cold air or warm air that we have in place at the time and how that correlates with the low pressure system that we have. So we are expecting a wetter than average February here throughout the month. And here's what that's going to look like, though, in terms of temperatures. Here's the European model. We use this for near-term climate outlooks. This is the first week of February here. Notice all the orange that we have here. This was not the case in January. As in January, if you look across northwest portions of the United States into the Canadian Rockies, there, all that blue and purple. But imagine that all being where the orange is now. That's really what we saw for the first to fourth week of January, but we're really not seeing that here. Temperatures here right around average, if not slightly above average. Remember, average temperatures this time of year are ranging from 35 degrees in South Bend to about 45 degrees in Evansville, Indiana. So anything above that by a degree or two will show up as orange on this map. So do keep that in mind here. So we are trending to be slightly above average for the beginning of February, but as we move into the middle of February towards the end of February, we are trending to be a little bit colder. But notice how there's no deep purples or pinks on this map. None of that. Just some light blues. We're just trending to be near average or slightly below average for the middle of the month towards the end of the month. So nothing too crazy. So keep in mind our average temperatures this time of the year range from the mid-30s to low 40s. So anything a degree or two below that will show up as blue on this map for Indiana. So that's really what we see here for the beginning for the month of February here. And here we are at the end of the February. We can see a little bit less blue here, but a little bit of a light blue showing up for the northeast and eastern half of the continental United States. So temperatures near average or slightly below for the end of the month and middle of the month, and warmer start to the month. That's really what we're seeing here. But what does that mean going forward here? And what does that look like on a map? Well, here's the overall outlook of what the jet stream is really going to look like here throughout the month of February. Now, it may move north or south depending on the setup that we have. But recently, what's been giving us our warm weather is that jet stream has retreated northward from where we were a few weeks ago. Imagine that jet stream going all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico, and that's what brought a historic snowstorm to portions of Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Georgia, and even Florida. Florida's seeing more snowfall than Anchorage, Alaska has seen all year, which is crazy to think about here, but it's true. But that jet stream has since retreated north, which has allowed all that snowfall down there to melt, but it also brought us a more spring-like pattern to parts of the Ohio Valley and lower Great Lakes region. But what this means is, in January, when this retreated south, it brought all the snow systems and large-scale weather systems with it south. leaving us under Arctic high pressure, which didn't allow a lot of snowfall or precipitation at all to fall during the month of January. It left us very dry. Now that it's retreated north, this is kind of your battle zone here, where those greens and purples kind of meet here on this map, where the jet stream is. Your low pressures are going to ride the jet stream right in that corridor there, and that's kind of your battle zone going forward here. Where your greens are, we're looking at wetter than average conditions here. The yellow we've highlighted for severe weather probabilities here. A lot of times during these amplified patterns, as we call it, where you have a deep troughing here in the east or the western United States and a ridging or a shallow ridge developing here across the eastern half, really sets up for digging lows that come down out of Colorado, Texas, and they dig, bringing moisture out of the Gulf, and they typically move northward here. As they do that, they pull moisture and instability from the Gulf, bringing above average precipitation to the Ozarks, all the way up to the Midwest and Ohio Valley. But by doing so, they often are two-sided systems where you have a winter side, highlighted in purple there, where the Climate Prediction Center is thinking has the best probabilities of snow during this time frame, but they also have a severe side or a thunderstorm side to them as well. And we are expecting that here going forward here. And here's kind of a look at what these systems may look like here for us here in the Midwest. Oftentimes two-sided, where you have a cold sector and a warm sector. So going forward here, do expect to see split systems where part of Indiana may see snow and part of it may see rain, or we all may see rain and we all may see snow. It really depends on how that jet stream moves, but looking at this pattern, I would expect parts of Indiana to see a bit of both flavors, if you will, especially going forward here in the middle of the month. Here to start the month, a lot of us will be in the warm sector here, where we'll be seeing a lot of rain like we're seeing tonight. As we move into the middle of the month here, especially after Super Bowl Sunday here next week, we really start to see a little bit of a pattern change here, where systems after that may have both flavors here. We'll just have to see what the setup we get. But speaking of a little bit of severe weather here, as we move throughout the month of February, so does the risk for tornadoes. Keep in mind, Indiana actually had their first tornado last year in the month of February. In fact, 2 separate days, February 10th and February 28th. Indiana had tornadoes on both of those days. In fact, every state here in the Midwest, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, and Michigan, had their first tornadoes by February 28th. So not impossible to have tornadoes in the month of February, although very uncommon. It's very hard to get everything to come together this far north. But historically, that risk is there here in the month of February, and we'll see that expand further north here, especially as we get into April and May. And June is actually the greatest risk for severe weather in Indiana is the month of June. So we are a ways out from that, but something to mention nonetheless, especially as we have a more amplified pattern here. Though severe weather is unlikely, it's definitely not impossible here for the month of February, as we have a more amplified pattern here going forward here. So that is kind of the look here at the month of February here. We're going to start out warm for the first week of February, going in a little bit cooler here for the middle of the month, and then to end the month here near average to end the month of February. So overall, not a bad month really in terms of temperatures. No Arctic blasts on the near term that we can see at this time. So minus 30 wind chills look very unlikely here for the month of February, at least at this time here. But if we do see a trend change, we will let you guys know as soon as we can accurately do so here. So a brief recap here tonight. Rain is starting to move into Indiana. In fact, has been raining in southern Indiana over the past couple of hours here. Heavy to moderate rainfall here tonight. After midnight here, that rain will slowly leave and exit the state. Your heaviest rainfall is expected between now and 1 a.m. As we move into tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow evening here, the bulk of the rain will be out of here. A few thunderstorms possible in Kentucky and Tennessee down there, as you can see there on the model here. Tomorrow night, especially those along the toll road or north, we're going to have to watch your temperatures fairly closely here. Right now, temperatures are predicted to be right around 33, 34 degrees. But with that being said, if they do trend colder, we'll have to watch that for isolated slick spots, especially on bridges and elevated surfaces. Something to keep in mind here for that. Other than that here, the bulk of the rain will be out of here by probably 8 o'clock tomorrow night, if not maybe a little bit later. We speak here our last look at rain totals here tomorrow. Heaviest totals across southern Indiana, especially south of Indianapolis, where you can see anywhere between 1 inch and 1 3/4 inches. A few isolated reports of 2 inches possible, especially across far southern Indiana, closer to the Ohio River down there. A little bit higher totals across northern Indiana. We may have to up totals a little bit, especially across Lake and Porter County, depending on how that showers develop tomorrow afternoon and where they sit. But for right now, a half-inch to inch is expected here across far northern Indiana tomorrow. Tomorrow afternoon, especially across central Indiana, central Ohio, between 9 a.m. and 2 p.m., a few of those showers or perhaps a few thunderstorms might have some pea-sized hail. So don't be surprised if you see that tomorrow. Again, severe weather is not expected tomorrow at all. Just a real narrow window where some pea-sized hail may develop in any stronger showers or perhaps a thunderstorm if they develop, thanks to some cold air aloft and some elevated instability to help to get those updrafts strong enough. So with that being said here, guys, thank you guys for joining me here on this Thursday night. Again, stay dry, stay warm, and we will see you next time.